Well, a good transition for politicized cases is the insanity of the New York Attorney General trying to go after the NRA.
Okay, so now this is the one where I had prefaced this earlier. I know nothing, I think virtually nothing about this. So can you set it up for anybody who knows nothing? What is the basis of this lawsuit for someone who's never heard of it?
So background is the NRA is a not-for-profit charitable institution. It's set up in New York after the Civil War to initially to train people how to shoot their weapons, and it was started by a bunch of Union soldiers who were who were disgruntled at how superior in arms the Confederate soldiers were. The Confederate soldiers were a lot better with guns than the Northern soldiers were. Now, that shouldn't come as a great surprise, given the South was far more agrarian than the North was. The North had a lot of immigrants from European cultures that hadn't used weapons as much, and the South was really frontier country, at least at some point or another. So everybody who founded the South, other than your cotton planters, they're a bunch of lazy bums from the South of England. But I got my own grievance there. But the rest of the South, your upcountry South, was very much. Hold on one second. There we go. I usually always have my ringer off, but then people complain. So c'est la vie. But they started the NRA in order to train Northerners how to shoot better because they were like, man, we got a problem. And one of their original targets, actually, interestingly enough, were actually ex-slaves. They wanted to teach ex-slaves how to defend themselves. And to arm ex-slaves in the 1860s, 1870s. Had they been able to sustain that and maintain that, we may have had a different Southern history. But the NRA, but they've always stayed in New York for that reason. So they're historically based out of New York, and they're organized as a not-for-profit. So this woman who ran for attorney general, promised to go after Donald Trump. I told people at the time, I was like, I've never seen this before. You'll say you'll go after categories of criminals, but you don't normally say, hey, if you elect me, I'll make sure that person ends up in jail. I mean, it's the old Soviet mantra from Beria to Stalin: show me the man and I'll find you the crime. And it's what they did to a lot of the Trump associates and affiliates, in my view, both Mueller and his predecessors under the Obama shadow government that was operating effectively because Trump couldn't get his own people in for forever. So what's happened is she ran on attacking the NRA. She said she was going to kill the NRA if she got elected. So she gets elected, and the NRA thought they could play nice, provide information, documentation, so forth. They even tried to go woke for the last 3 months. All that did was backfire because that communicated vulnerability. Appeasing, bowing before a king only gets you guillotined, is what I like to say. So it's like dealing with the government, never bow before the king. You got to go up and punch them in the nads. Then that gets their attention, and maybe they'll do something. So she decided she brought civil suit last week. Her grounds are she wants to completely disband them. And to understand the legal background of this, there's a means by which you can disaffiliate a corporation, or you can get dissolve a corporation or dissolve a charitable entity. But that's to protect the point and purpose of the charitable entity, not because you disagree with the politics of the political entity. Her predicate of doing so was to just scroll through every record that the NRA has. By the way, the NRA disclosed that they turned over their entire membership list. Unbelievable. They should have fought that in a civil rights case right away. They're like, oh, but they promised us they wouldn't disclose it. Of course it got disclosed, you idiot. That's just sad. The NRA has some bad counsel right now, or up to this point at least. So she decides that based on financial transactions of certain high-ranking officials at the NRA that she thinks are outside the NRA, the not-for-profit rules, self-dealing allegations, things of that nature, that she's alleging that she can dissolve the NRA, which is insane. The provisions of dissolution are for when a company or a charity is no longer able to serve its purpose, where you're protecting its donors. Clearly, she's not out to protect its donors. So you even had the Washington Post today have an editorial saying it's an outrageous abuse of prosecutorial misconduct. And it led to where the NRA has been effective and smart is in civil suits. They filed a federal suit in the Northern District of New York on grounds that this is a blatant 1983 violation, that this is a classic case of selective prosecution. Now, normally selective prosecution is brutally hard to prove. They make it that way for a reason. Not a good reason. It's to protect the political powers that be. But here she's so overt and so open in what she's doing. And when you're getting criticism from the Washington Post and you're getting criticism from Jonathan Turley, both left-leaning legal sources or political sources, then that should tell you how bad it is. But she doesn't care. She's completely tone deaf. New York is tone deaf right now. They're not paying attention. I mean, nobody would have normally prosecuted the Amy Cooper case outside of crazy politics. That's what's happening in New York right now, and she's the ultimate example of it. So I think the NRA may win their federal civil rights suit, and she may be. They're asking for a stay, which is very hard to get in a pending criminal case because of interjurisdictional issues and some abstention doctrines that say you cannot sue to stop a federal criminal or state criminal proceeding in federal court. But I think they may win ultimately on declaratory relief. It tells you something that they think they cannot get relief from the governor and cannot get relief from the New York State court judges that they went to federal court. But it's an egregious abuse of political power. It'd be like the state attorney general of Alabama running for attorney general of Alabama and saying, if you elect me, I'm going to end and terminate Planned Parenthood. And then coming up and then suing to dissolve them on grounds that they are just how they've used their money at the top.
Well, so here, let's actually, the first question. It's a civil suit under I guess some sort of corporate law act, which seeks the dissolution of a company.
Or in this case, charitable institutions law.
Okay.
The state attorney generals have very broad authority over charitable institutions.
Okay. Now, and I would presume, I don't know the case law, but I presume it would be something similar that my battery is not plugged in. Hold on 1 second. Holy cow. I presume it would be, even if there were these monetary violations, that they were acting as a for-profit on certain elements. I would presume that the standard sanction would be monetary penalties and not dissolution of the not-for-profit.
Correct. And that's an extreme remedy that is almost never granted. I've done derivative lawsuits where that was on the table. Judges hate to grant that. They're just not going to do that. And they're definitely not going to do it when the people that the NRA is designed to serve don't want it. I mean, that's what's unheard of here. Normally, when you bring an action to dissolve, it's because the original donors, contributors, shareholders, whether it's a charity or a non-charity, want that to occur, or some big group of them want that to occur, or the purpose of it no longer exists. It is unheard of to seek to dissolve a charity when everybody that supports that charity opposes the action.
So apparently, King of Casual says that Lawful Masses Leonard French said that it was a good case. I'll check out his video. I mean, but now, so here's another question.
That's people who don't know charitable law. I mean, I've done this exact law in California. I've done it in the context of New York, where what they're divorcing is policy from reality. So let me give you an example. You have a private trust or private charity, and the trustee is stealing all the money. In that context, the beneficiaries may want the dissolution of the trust and those funds given to them or to a different charity. And in that context, so what someone like French may have done just, hey, there's been past examples of where there's been misconduct at the top. They've done dissolution. Yeah, when the beneficiaries wanted that to happen, not when they don't want it to happen, and definitely not when the person ran for office saying, I'm going to disband them, when she knew none of this. So it's clearly that her political motivation, this was clearly, show me the man, I'll find a crime, number one. And number two, it's seeking dissolution that is directly against and contrary to the policy behind dissolution power in the first place.
Okay. And now, is there a provision that would allow, hypothetically, worst case scenario, NRA says, okay, well, can NRA transfer or transition, from not-for-profit to for-profit corporation by modifying their articles of incorporation?
They could do that, but that creates all kinds of tax headaches for them. So the more likely was they would start a different charity. But the problem is the IRS is taking about a year to approve a 501c application. So that's why it's troublesome for them to have to go through that. The economic impact can vary too. Sometimes, by the way, here's what state attorney, it's always been a hidden power. It's like the phrase escheat to the state. So like when you don't have a will, sometimes your property ends up in the government's hands. They treat charitable property the same way. If they can obtain but here's what's supposed to happen. Someone creates a charity. The person who created it's no longer around. The trustee of the charity is completely abusing all the funds. State comes in, disbands it, and then the state often uses the funds themselves. There's circumstances where they can do that. Now, that's supposed to be very limited. I've always had a problem with that. But that gives you an idea for where they could theoretically go. It's why the suit is deeply problematic. If you can start targeting anyone you don't like politically to disband them, to dissolve them, try to put them in prison, try to fine them, try to tax them. Well, any of the powers of the state like that, politically weaponizing it like that, that is a very dangerous place to be. And as I remind people on the left, people on the right, just because people on the right haven't done it doesn't mean that the next generation won't. They're going to return the favor at some point. So this is a bad place for anybody to go. But it's where the New York State Attorney General is. It shows you how bad every aspect of criminal justice is in the state of New York.
And now the question is, what's the status of the lawsuit right now? Just the initial claim has been filed. No motions, summary motions to dismiss.
No. So two things have happened. She has filed her civil claim against the NRA to dissolve them. They turned around and filed a federal court suit in the Northern District of New York to stay it, to get declaratory relief, to get monetary relief, to enjoin any further actions along those lines. I think they will likely win some portion of the remedy, but it'll be interesting to see what happens. Also, a lot of these New York State prosecutors are ill-equipped to handle some of this. I dealt with that in the Snipes case when they were abusing a different Snipes case, not the criminal tax case in Florida, but the improper family court case in New York City. And they were completely ill-equipped for I filed the first ever federal civil rights case against them. They had no idea that was coming. Then met with high-ranking members of the Bloomberg administration who made sure to kill the case before they could get humiliated on appeal. But all the regular lawyers handling the case had no idea how this law worked. So there's a degree of incompetency along with political intransigency that is in play here. That we'll see. I mean, and then you flip from that scope over there with the NRA with New York to people having to sue to keep schools open in California. If that's a bridge to the next conversation.
It is, but let's do this one. Two chats.
Oh, absolutely.
And by the way, Jim Satala or Jim Sataya said I missed one of his chats. Put the comment back in because
we should definitely get to the super chats.
Let's see this here. So Jim Sataya, don't post a super chat. Just get your question in if you're still here. Atlas De Snyder says recently the NRA has seemingly become unpopular with many gun owners, especially among the younger of us. Maybe this will galvanize reform within or reorganization elsewhere. So,
I think they need it. I think they go back and forth on their consistency. It's the problem of the professional class. The professional class as a class has a different political perspective than working class America. And the problem is the professional class not only dominates academia, dominates our cultural institutions, dominates the legal institutions, medical institutions, but it also dominates our political class. And so that's why your Republican political consultant is mostly an idiot. That's why they're all on the same professional class bias. That's why you see all these corporations bowing to the new woke gods without even second guessing or wondering whether this is the best idea. So it's because the professional class dominates the marketing environment in most places and dominate. And so most of the high-ranking people at the NRA are completely clueless. They're the kind of people who thought Trump was going to lose in 2016. So they are deeply out of touch with the everyday gun owner, and they need to get back in touch with the ordinary everyday gun owner. Because the number one thing they still do a lot of the hobby, and some of their history was based in this, but like a lot of the left still thinks that most people are arguing for gun rights to either hunt or as a hobby. That's not it. 90% of gun owners have it to defend themselves and their family and their friends and their property. That's what they have it for. And that, in fact, was the original premise of the NRA, the primary premise. They end up doing competitions as a way to get people there, but they weren't formed solely to hold pageants of great shooting. And yet you have a lot of these people at the top that don't have that rootedness, that they don't have a history. And also it's been a little bit compromised by gun manufacturers who have their own interest. This is a member-run organization that needs to get back in touch with the ordinary, everyday member. And they should elevate people in a more little d democratic way. And then they would be much more honest. They would have known not to go along with this woke police nonsense. They would have known not to compromise with the attorney general's office, not to play ball with them. I would have sued him right away. I would have sued her as soon as she won office, because then she's under great pressure not to pursue the case. And then there's no pending criminal investigation you're trying to enjoin. Waiting until after it happens is always harder. So there's no question that the NRA needs to get its head back in the game, and maybe hopefully this will partially achieve that.
Interesting. And someone says, Eric D says, do you think the NFL is reporting their BLM activities as taxable? To which Uncivil Law replied, the NFL is tax exempt.
Yeah, I mean, there's a great monopoly. I mean, they have all kinds of antitrust exemptions that are problematic in my view. Through Congress, there are things about the way they're doing, and so the NCAA is about to make the same grievous mistake. They may be out of business in a year. They don't understand their own economic model. But this is because your typical university president is listening to MSNBC. They're not tuned into reality. They don't understand their own audience. Now, what my guess is what you'll see is the SEC will keep playing football this year, just like high school football is being played. The Big 12 will still play. ACC will still play. But you'll likely see the liberal professors in swing states, but who are themselves very liberal. Everybody at the University of Michigan is liberal. Everybody now Ohio State's more of a mixed bag. Penn State, more of a mixed bag. But like 99% of players by most ratings, by most polls that have been done or surveys have done, want to play in college football. This denies a bunch of poor kids the opportunities to get access to the NFL and a lot of other benefits that accrue to them. It doesn't benefit them. It doesn't benefit anybody. It's not necessary. The likelihood a college-age person will die from COVID is less than the flu. So all of this is insanity, and yet the NCAA is financially structured as a not-for-profit entity, even though everybody's making a lot of cash based on these kids' athletic abilities. And if they strip the fans of any interest in participating or even the ability to participate this year with no season, they're going to greatly regret it. The NCAA tournament is 90% of NCAA sports-related revenue. College football is 75 to 80% of college's revenues. So you can say bye-bye to women's basketball, and you can say bye-bye to lacrosse, and you can say bye-bye to soccer because there's enough money to support them. So these are people that don't. There's also institutional debt obligations that will not be met because they don't have the revenues to do so. They don't understand what they're doing, but it's because the professional class is completely disconnected from working class reality and ordinary Americana to a degree that is more severe than even the late 60s, which is the most analogous time period I know of to this period of American politics.
Super interesting. And one last is Nomad062 says, any thoughts on the Woostenberg's Chipotle couple case?
Oh, okay. I believe that's the case of the lady and her husband that were walking out of Chipotle, who they believe or felt were being harassed by an African-American, I believe, mother and her daughter. And she pulled a gun, flashed it at him, got in. They're being charged with brandishing as well. That case is not as easy a case to defend as the McCloskey case is. But I think that they are still in their right. I mean, they're reacting to the situation and circumstance. There clearly was some degree of interference and impairment. They brandished it just briefly and then put it away and then went home. I don't think that's an appropriate case for criminal prosecution at all. And I think they do have a good self-defense argument. And as I've told people, my Milwaukee case from some years ago, or actually just 2 years ago, previewed the backlash that's going to be coming, and the juries are going to be delivering. So I think that a lot of these bogus criminal prosecutions against people exercising self-defense will go nowhere. And because you have cases with far less egregious facts than Bernie Goetz, and people forget Bernie Goetz in New York City walked completely acquitted of all charges back in the mid-'80s. These are people just brandishing guns during a crazy environment where people are committing all kinds of violence on a nightly basis, as they continue to do in Portland. I think it's night 70 or 72, whatever it is, of violence in a row. So I think in that environment, these people ultimately will be acquitted. I think the same in the Austin case, the guy who shot because he thought someone was pointing a gun at him. And the media put out a crazy story. They said, oh, he was busy pushing his disabled fiancée when suddenly a crazy right-winger just shot him in the head. And you can see him behind the guy's car with his gun and with a machine gun and being interviewed that night talking about everybody else is a wuss and he's going to show him it. It's like, here's what I always tell people. The media can lie, that they can gaslight. A lawyer can't in court because the evidence will come out. If you tell a big lie like the media lie, there's not a single media story of this kind that would hold up for 5 seconds before an independent jury in court because the evidence wouldn't back them up at all.
But this is the problem. I mean, I think most people will agree with you, but the process is the punishment, and the politicizing the process is enough of the punishment to just deter people, not even deter, but to cause people to live in terror. And
look what happened in New York. Amy Cooper gets criminally prosecuted for calling 911 for just identifying who the guy is after he jumps her and starts yelling at her. And so a couple of weeks later, a woman is being harassed by people putting off fireworks in her neighborhood. She calls 911. They say, don't waste our time. Just go up and ask them not to do the fireworks. She does that. She gets shot and killed. So that's what happens when we send out the wrong social messages. Tell people not to use 911. Tell people that you will be prosecuted if you defend yourself. Tell people you'll be, go back and look at the Reginald Denny tape from 1992 in the LA riots. See how not defending yourself and being nice worked out for him. He's the truck driver, got the daylights kicked out of him. So they were never bold enough to try to prosecute the Koreans who armed themselves in self-defense during that proceedings. But they are now. This is what they would do today. They would prosecute all of those Koreans for arming themselves outside of their stores. That's where the left has gone. I mean, they want exclusive power. They're willing to weaponize your employment, willing to weaponize your access to education, willingness to weaponize your access to social media, willingness to weaponize your access to weapons of self-defense, and willingness to weaponize even your ability to exercise your self-defense. So it's weaponizing the prosecutorial system, educational system, political. They're weaponizing everything they can because power ends justify the means in this America.